Hello, Dan. How are you?
Good morning, Marina. I'm doing great.
All right, are you ready for this week's episode on the EMyth Revisited, a book that we
Absolutely.
both
Really
read?
excited. Yeah.
Me too, me too. So, before we get started, I'd like our listeners to know that what we decided to do for this episode is to talk about our own businesses as a case studies about how do we apply some of this content that we take in. A lot of people have heard about the EMyth Revisited. It's a great word, the EMyth, and then the EMyth Revisited. Excuse me.
hmm
Great books, and I think that we decided to dive in and see how it works out when you put it into action. So let's talk a little bit about sonic virtual assistants. Let's use your
Okay.
case study first. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the evolution of sonic virtual assistants, where you are now, and how it relates to the book?
Okay, cool. So I just launched Sonic VA back in January of this year. So it's something I've been doing for a while, virtual staffing, outsourcing. I've been doing that for about 10 years. But the Sonic VA brand really was designed for small businesses, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches, people that need a right hand, a virtual assistant to help them in their business. And so I launched this back in January. And having launched similar businesses before, I thought it would be easy. But going through it now, we're in 10 months into the launch, and it's become a lot more challenging to grow than I thought it would be. So a few months back, we were talking about the book, The EMyth Revisited. And so I reread it, and I can identify exactly where I'm at in my business's evolution based on the things that Michael Gerber talks about in his book. So I'm living again the whole process that you go as an entrepreneur to get to be a full-fledged entrepreneur. You have to go through an evolution, and Michael talks about that in his book quite well.
Right, and let's talk about what that evolution is like. I think what we're really saying, and the way I was actually surprised by the way he phrased it. He said a business will go through its infancy, and if it's doing well, it'll move into adolescence, and then it'll finally
Mhm.
mature. And I thought that it was an interesting way to look at a business. I didn't expect it. I know some people say, "Yeah, my business is my baby," but I didn't really expect him to frame it in that way. Where would you say Sonic Virtual Assistants or Sonic VA is at this point?
Well, you're transitioning from infancy to adolescence when you have a lot of problems. When you're struggling to grow. So you think about how awkward it is for someone, a child, to start to walk, to be able to have some independence. That is problematic because it requires a lot of care, right? So when you think back, if you've had a child and your child is like, at 2, 3 years old, that's like one of the most dangerous times for that child because their curiosity way overpowers their common sense, right? So we're constantly trying to stop them from burning themselves and falling and doing this and doing that. That's where a business is at after you get through the infancy stage where you just launch things and you get your ideas out there and you start sharing. You get some clients, you start making a little bit of progress. That's infancy for a business. Adolescence is when you start having growing problems.
Okay,
So that's
you're
where I'm
at
at right now.
okay. No pimples. Good. All right. Okay.
Yeah,
So let's okay, I think that's the first thing that will be a big part of our conversation today. The second thing that I think is really interesting about the book that I think ties very well into what we're talking about is the roles that we play when we start a company. So as we both know now, after reading the book, we can be a technician, we can be the manager, or we can be the entrepreneur. And many of us are doing all three, which is not an easy thing to do. And I love the way he spelled that out. So let's talk a little bit about how that ties into your business and how have you been juggling all of this?
sure. So, for example, with virtual assistants, virtual staffing, the technician part is basically having the skills to do things like create videos or websites or do marketing, make images for social media, build engagement. That's all technical stuff. I can do that. In fact, all my clients can do a lot of that themselves too. But then you have to start being able to scale the business by having more than just you be the technician. Somebody else has to start doing the work. So then you become a manager. You have to hire people that you can manage to do the work instead of you doing it yourself. And then you start running into problems there where people won't do things exactly the way you would do it. And that kind of like loss of control, that need for trust, that's where a lot of people get stuck when they become the manager. But once you've got managers that can manage technicians, then you're scaling your business towards adulthood, which is when you are the entrepreneur, when you can actually live the entrepreneurial lifestyle that most people assume they get as soon as they set up their own business. But you actually don't achieve until you've got a bunch of technicians working for a manager that's able to free you up to truly be an entrepreneur. And
Right,
that's where I aspire to be with Sonic VA. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's not going to happen tomorrow.
right. Yeah, I think the only hesitation I have, and I think many entrepreneurs might have, is that not all of us are too keen on the idea of having to work or manage other people. I mean, it's not an easy task for anyone, I don't think. I mean, some
Right.
people sure are better than others, but when you've got this vision, right? Many of us jump into business because the entrepreneurial spirit is so overpowering, right? We've got this big idea. So how do you see this playing out? You're saying that you like the idea of eventually getting into the maturity stage. So what are
Well,
some thoughts?
I've done that before with a couple of my previous businesses where I managed to get it to the maturity stage. And what that looks like is where you have managers that are running the business, all the operations of day to day. So you can focus on the big picture. You can focus on doing new things. You can focus on more your passion projects versus having to do things. That's where I want this to be. So for that to happen for Sonic VA, that means I've got to have a couple people that I can turn over most of the operational control of the business to. I got to give them the keys to the car
Right.
and trust them, right? So I can ride in the back seat and chill. And that's really, where I imagine in the next, few months, 6 months, hopefully at the most, to get those people in place to be able to allow me to get back to a lifestyle where I'm just cruising and not having to worry about, the operational things.
So you almost have already, let's say, done the E-Myth, right? And maybe you just didn't understand that you were naturally going through those phases and growing.
Absolutely.
To me, right? And so now you're
Yep.
doing it all over again. And let's talk a little bit more about the challenges. You're saying that you're in the growth. It sounds like you're in a transition between infancy and adolescence, and therefore a lot of
Yes.
problems, a lot of growth. So let's talk about how do you approach the challenges today? What do you see?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is you have to know what you're good at and stick to that. And so you got to find people that can complement you, right? For example, I'm not the most patient person in the world. Um, and I tend to expect a lot of people. So I tend to push people a little hard. So I need to find managers who can interpret that and not pass that same kind of expectation on the employees, which will probably crush them, right? So having people that are good people is step number one. I'm an idea person. I'm a data geek. I'm into the numbers and the metrics, and so I tend to not be as strong when it comes to the interpersonal skills. So identifying that, and then that bleeds off into recruiting and hiring, looking for the right people. I tend to go for people that have a technical skill, but don't always, can't always analyze how well they're going to be as far as working as part of a team. So my first hires, whenever I do a new business, is always to look for somebody who can counterbalance me, who can do the soft skills that I don't necessarily have as a big strength.
All right. And so then let's talk a little bit about how much of your time have you thought about how much of your time you're spending as a technician versus a manager versus the entrepreneur? Have you thought of
Right. So one thing I learned early on was you have to really be zero technician very quickly to scale your business. If majority of your time or even half your time is doing the work itself, you're never going to scale. It's always going to be primarily as much as you can do yourself, and maybe you bring on one person to do some of the things, or you can farm out some of the work. But your business is always going to be handcuffed by the fact that you have to do most of the actual work. So with Sonic VA, I had the advantage of launching it already planning on not being a technician. So I know the skill sets that are needed from my previous companies and my previous experience. I'm able to identify the technicians without having to do it myself. But for most people, it's really where you do the work yourself so well it's hard to let go of. And it really is, I think, the biggest challenge to go from infancy to adolescence for a entrepreneur, a business owner, is letting go of doing things yourself. And there's a mantra that I think if you're successful in business, you learned early on, done is better than perfect,
Yeah, I
right?
agree. I agree. Well, before we can do that, though, I think you and I discussed, we need systems, right? How much of a challenge is systems? I would say for myself, I think it's been taking me quite a bit of time, when you're being the technician, to say, oh, wait a minute, let me take a step back and try to log what it is that I'm actually doing, right? That's an important step also. How's that going for you?
Well, I think this is one of the things where, I mean, I have a project management background in corporate America before I started my own business. And I'm very organized just by in general. So that gives me the ability to kind of step outside my business and think of how to look at the business from the outside. And Michael Gerber talks about the difference between working in and working on your business. And this is where it really starts to make a difference. If you're working in your business, if you're a technician and all you can do is the things you see in front of you, you're never going to be able to grow. You have to be able to step outside what you're doing day to day and really look at it from an external view. And that allows you to start thinking of the systems, right? You start seeing where the inefficiencies are. You start seeing where the wasted time is. You start seeing where there's a lot of defects being made. So if you have any background at all in Six Sigma or Lean, these are kind of the concepts that help you identify how to improve a process and build a system. And
Yeah.
that's really the key, is stepping outside the business and looking at it from above so that you can really see where the problems are.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And so what do you think is next? Like, I think that I picked up the book actually because I got tired of hearing it come up over and over and over again in different podcasts, books, other books. And I'm really glad that I read it. I think that I'm glad you read it with me. Uh, I think that the way it begins, it almost makes entrepreneurship seem like hmm, almost like a crapshoot at first. It's like we all sort of buy into this idea of what it is, but we don't really know, even after we dive in, what it truly is to make something sustainable and then something that can operate without you. So
Right.
I think that let's talk about some next steps. Like, what are some ways that you think we can? Because you and I know one thing: you can read all you want, but unless you act, nothing will ever change, right? So let's
Right.
talk a little bit about some ideas that we might have about implementing some of the things that we've learned.
Well, that's exactly why I founded Sonic VA to address that exact situation where you're starting to identify in your business there's certain things that you're doing but you shouldn't be doing. There's a exercise that I do with a lot of people when I'm doing a workshop. And basically, I ask them to take out a sheet of paper and write down 3 columns. And the column on the far left, write down why you got into the business in the first place. Write down the big picture, the ideas, the passion, the dreams. What did you want to do when you first started? What is your goal, right? For the ultimate version of your business. Now, in the middle column, write down what you've actually done in your business for the last week. What are the tasks, the things that had to get done, the things that have to happen for a business to work? Doing expense reports, managing inventory, pushing out new marketing content, whatever it may be in your business, what you're doing right now. And then what you're going to see is there's probably a pretty big disconnect between what you're doing and what you thought you would be doing or what you want to be doing.
Right.
So the goal now is to take the column on the far right, and this is what you outsource. This is what you delegate to a virtual assistant. You take away some of the things in the middle column that are routine, that are repetitive, that are manual, that are mundane, and you pass them off to somebody else to free up your time to pull in some more things from the left that are really why you got in the first place. If
I
you're
like
able,
that.
thank
That's
you. Yeah.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Actually, you make it so simple. I love it. I really do like that. And I think that the business model, that everything that you do, that you offer with your VAs really taps into helping other people accelerate their own EMyth journey, if you think about it.
Yes.
I really think that's a smart way to look at it because it's almost summarizes actually what we've read in that book. It's like you go into business thinking one thing, you get into it and realize you're in way over your head pretty quickly. And then you need to do exactly what you said. You really have to take a step back. I think that's really great ideas. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it's worked so far. So we'll see where, check back in 6 months and we'll see how I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the clients, your ideal clients for, it sounds like small business owners, entrepreneurs can benefit a great deal from working with Sonic VA. How does that process work? Do you match them up to people? How does the
Sure.
magic work after you decide that you're going to let go and delegate?
Well, the first thing is when you identify what you have to delegate, then you find the people that have that task set. And then you have to match for personality, for work style, for the expectations. So part of my background with Sonic VA is I've been doing this for a while. So I have a skill in being able to match people, match a client with a virtual assistant. So that's part of it. And then part of it's just having built the system where you know what to plug in for what need. There are really two kinds of clients that I work with. The first type of client I work with is someone who's got that list already figured out. They know what's in their far right column and they just need someone to actually take things off their plate. Those you can just pick up and go, right, and do things. Then you have clients who are still kind of trying to figure out, they have their vision, they have their master plan, they're working really hard at it, but they can never seem to get out of being stuck.
That's me.
And
Sometimes I have to just be honest here. There are so many days when I'm exactly there right now. I'm really trying to pull myself out of the middle column, if that's how we're gonna refer to it, so that I can get
right.
into the right side. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where this is where you have to hire somebody to help you do that, right? Because you are so stuck in your business. You never have time to get outside your business to look at it. And until you can delegate a few things, until you start seeing somebody else actually checking off some to-do list items that you didn't do yourself, you're never going to be able to get out of that technician mindset. And you're going to be stuck in infancy. And so if you hire somebody to start doing some things for you, that's the best part. But if you're not there yet, if you're kind of overwhelmed with it, you got too much going on, then you have somebody document that. You have your VA start not doing tasks, but building organization, build out a project plan, manage a project board on Trello or Asana or Monday, start giving you deliverables. So then when you are the technician, you can be more productive on a path. So that and having somebody help kind of manage your time is a good way to get started with a virtual assistant, because they're just going to do what you tell them to do, and they're going to be unbiased in it. So they're going to say, "Hey, this is what you're supposed to have done today," and you're going to be like, "Yeah, I didn't do that. I need to finish it." You need that, right? You need that person on your shoulder telling you, like, "Don't forget this."
Right.
So,
Okay. I like that. Well, anything else you want to share about your challenges in this, stage that you're in, and what's next?
well, just it's funny. There's something like you see data all the time about like 80% of small businesses fail in the first couple of years, and it's really, really hard to be an entrepreneur and make it work. And I've been making it work for going on 12 years, and I've launched several businesses. So the thing that I always think of is, how did I get this far? People talk about grit and persistence and all that kind of stuff, and those are important. You can't give up. But the bottom line is you have to be able to think of the systems, right? It's all about how can you replicate or multiply what you do and and have it grow beyond you and scale. So when I think about my successes, both my own and with my clients, it's defining the system that you need to do that. That's really where the whole meat of the EMyth Revisited is, and where I've been successful is that building the systems.
Okay, I think that's a great, great tip for all of us, and I'm going to do it too. I'm
Looking
going
forward to it.
to do. That's where I am on my journey. All right, I think we are going to close out this episode. I would say that both of us got a lot out of reading that book, and
Yes.
the E-Myth. We read the E-Myth Revisited, which I know means that the E-Myth already had a previous edition, but I'm glad we read this one. Um, and I think that the message here is what we like to share with our audience is that, we have a lot of valuable IP. We say it again and again, right? Everything we do comes from what we care about, what we're passionate about, what we're really, really good at. But then we have to build a really strong, solid foundation around that. And that's where reading books like the EMyth, or, hopefully communicating with us, engaging with us in our workshops and getting to know us a little bit better, we can work toward, really getting what we want out of our businesses and our vision for success. So let's read and act on what we read, and we will follow up in a few months on this, I think.
Sounds great. Really fun.
All right, Dan, good to see you. And to our audience, until next time.
All right, everyone, take care.